These are not crazy demands. But for the empire, what would be sane to all of us is just insane to them. How could anyone demand justice? We don't, we give what we want, we take what we want.
I think what we're witnessing right now is a new face of the West Asia by defining practically. Because before, you remember during JCPOA, Iran was seeking some sort of guarantees on the part of, UN Security Council or other councils within UN. Right now, they can have, with the ongoing negotiations, I would argue that maybe some, you know, we have we can have some sort of talks in terms of what UN can do. Other countries like China, like Russia, and other important countries can do. Pakistan, regional countries can do to bring some sort of sanity to what's going on between Iran and the United States. But what is important is practical. One is the Strait of Hormuz to guarantee that the deal is going on and is working for both sides. And the other one is this Bab al Mandab, because yesterday we've learned from Yemenis, they said if something goes wrong in Lebanon, they're going to close this Bab al Mandab. And the head of the Iranian IRGC Quds Force, Brigadier General Ismail Ghani, he said the same thing, that Bab al Mandab is still there and we can just close Bab al Mandab as well. These are two important choke points in the hand of the acts of resistance. And these are guarantees for any sort of deal between the acts of resistance and the United States. What is your...
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. As we discussed earlier, the Iranians and their allies in the Axis, they have not gone very far up the escalation ladder for humanitarian reasons. I mean, remember, and if we have war though this time around, it'll be, as I said, it'll escalate very fast based on what the Zionists and the Americans are saying, destroying all of Iran's critical infrastructure. And so Iran doesn't want that to happen. Just like, so for example, when I've warned people in these regimes, in Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait, to leave when these threats were being made, or when we're on the verge of we seem to be on the verge of war, is because I don't want people to get killed. But if they destroy Iran's critical infrastructure from using these regimes, using these countries, then Iran will retaliate. Why did Iran strike Qatar's gas installations? Because our gas installations were targeted. It's deterrence. If Iran doesn't do it, they'll destroy everything. They won't relent. They have no humanity, the Epstein class. They have zero humanity. They started the war with murdering 168 little girls, and the Western media was indifferent about it. Human rights organizations, they're all funded by the Epstein class. All of these where do you think the Western human rights organizations get their money? Where do you think these feminist organizations, all these NGOs, where do they get their money? Do they get it from like workers and working in factories in Ohio, or farmers in I don't know, in Northern Europe? Of course not. They get them from these powerful NGOs. They're all wittingly or otherwise, unwittingly working in. They're working. I don't want to say they're all agents, but in general, they're working in the interests. Their organizations work for the interests of the empire. So Iran does not want. So this time around, if there is war, there will be swift. And look at what happened. They murdered almost 3,500 Iranians. How many Arabs and workers in the Persian Gulf died in this war? Not even 20. Why? Because Iran was careful not to kill civilians, even though these countries were deeply involved. And so my warnings were also basically to say, get out of there. If there's war and they go, and infrastructure is destroyed, the oil and gas facilities, the electricity, and all that, it'll be unlivable. So leave, so you don't get hurt. No one here wants people to get hurt. We don't want the war. So Iran did not go up the escalation ladder. But next time, based on Trump's own threats to wipe out a civilization, no one protests in the West about this. No, I mean, I'm not talking about ordinary people. I'm talking about the media, the NGOs, the ruling class. Wipe out Iran's civilization, obliterate Iran, send Iran back to the Stone Age. Based on those threats, next time around, the move up the escalation ladder will be very swift. What does that mean? That will mean no more oil and gas from our region, of course. Right now, you know that like 25 to 30 ships go through the Strait of Hormuz every day. Countries that are friendly to Iran, or at least didn't take part in the war against Iran, they can use the strait. Bab al-Mandab will be closed. Iraq, the resistance will rise up. It'll be a completely different situation. It will be catastrophic for the world. And we can do it now. But we do not want the global economy to be wrecked. We want an end to the genocide in West Asia. And we want life to go on for ordinary people across the globe and the region as normal.
Europeans, we had Sweden talking about Iran has to open up the Strait of Hormuz because it's against international law. And these countries were part of this regime of sanctions for many, many years, and they put a lot of pressure. The people, those kids in Iran who have the problem with this butterfly sort of disease, and they don't receive the proper remedies from, for example, one of the countries that comes from is Sweden because of the sanctions. And right now they're asking the same thing. So Iran has something to say with these European countries, with these countries who are participating or facilitating to put pressure on Iranian economy, Iranian people. We were talking about for many years, they were telling us that the sanctions are not part of this medical sort of equipment, medicine and all of this aspect, this area is not sanctioned by the West. But they're part of the sanction. Iran cannot buy anything from outside. This is the problem. This is the main issue right now. Iranians are saying right now, do you need the Strait of Hormuz? You have to do something about the sanctions, the way that you're putting pressure on our economy, our people, innocent people being hit by these sanctions.
First of all, they're lying. They do include all of these in the sanctions. They use, for example, Iran wants to buy equipment from for hospitals, and they call a lot of that equipment dual use, just to prevent it from being exported to Iran. And then they prevent medicines from getting in. Many pharmaceutical companies, they tell the Iranians, we just can't work with you, and because they want to be on the safe side. And then others, when Iran can't, if they say they are willing to cooperate, Iran approaches banks, and the banks say we can't help you. And the Iranians say, well, these aren't sanctioned, and they say, well, so the Europeans and the Americans have designed it in a way to make sure nothing works. But they can pretend to say, no, we're excluding medicine. They're lying. They're trying to block medicine from entering Iran. They're trying. That's just like they murdered the kids. And look at Gaza. After Gaza, should anyone be surprised? After what's happening right now in Lebanon, they're slaughtering kids every day. Why should anyone be surprised? But it's not just that, Nima. During the 12-day war, these European countries supported the war. During this war, they supported the war. They condemned Iran for aggression against Iran. It's like this dystopian world. That's why I say that they're at the bottom of humanity. I prefer the North Korean government, whatever it may be, to any of these governments in Europe and North, any of them, every single one, Australia, New Zealand, this club. Canada. I prefer any government to theirs. I prefer Cuba. I'd rather live in Cuba than I'd rather go and give taxes to these regimes. I mean, I know lots of people oppose them, and they're working activists, I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying that me as an individual, if I want to leave Iran, I don't want to leave. I don't want to live in those countries. I mean, their regimes are utterly sinister. There are many heroes: Jews, Christians, Muslims, Hindus, working to support the Palestinian cause, and majority in the West polls show that they're opposed to the regimes and the Epstein class. But these regimes are horrible. They're evil. And so NATO countries and European countries, they are a part of this aggression against Iran. They've been a part of it from the beginning, and they are part of it now. But Iran is not intimidated by them. They have more than enough on their plate now in Ukraine, and they're just destroying their own economies. Their economies are all being destroyed. And I think many of these governments are going to be removed from power. Look at the approval ratings of the Chancellor of Germany, or the President of France, or the Prime Minister of the UK, and even the opposition, even those the fascists who want to come to power. In many cases, they're not going to do any better. They can't reverse this trend because they don't have. They're not going to pursue sane policies either. You know, it's just going to get worse and worse until there are sane people in power in these countries who bring about change. That will hopefully happen at some point, but it's not happening now.
They have never condemned Europeans. They have never condemned the Israeli occupation of southern part of Lebanon.
No. And the Western media calls this an incursion, and they say these are Hezbollah. I mean, look at just look at Twitter, the page where it gives you news. It says Israel targeting Hezbollah, and then but all the images are just women and children being slaughtered, families being destroyed, apartment blocks being brought down. The people who work at Twitter, they're just tools. And elsewhere, I mean, that's just how it is. That's how the West is now. The Israelis want to merge the genocidal Israeli army with the U.S. armed forces. I mean, it's just unbelievable where they're taking these things. None of this would have, been on my radar 20, 30 years ago. But that's how it is. But it's also a sign of desperation. And I don't know, that Axios is fake news, just like Iran International. And no one should ever should even watch Iran International, follow them. They're Zionist, Saudi, who depending on who funds them, and both probably do, they're just propaganda. And but so is Axios. Now, Axios, with regards to the Trump Netanyahu phone conversation, that's very interesting, because I don't trust Axios, and I don't trust that this was actually said between Trump and Netanyahu. But the fact that Axios did put this out, and that Axios is Zionist and controlled by people in power in the United States, this does humiliate Netanyahu, whether Trump said anything or not. And it seems to me that while Axios is fake news, that there maybe, I'm just guessing, I haven't spoken with anyone, I'm not an expert on the Israeli regime, I know far less about Zionism and what's going on in the United States than many of your other guests. So, maybe I'm completely wrong. And so people should take whatever I say with a great deal of caution, but on this matter, at least, maybe on everything. But I don't claim to be an authority on anything at all. But maybe there are elements within the Zionist class, those who are in power, that think it's time to get rid of Netanyahu. Maybe this is a part of something. So I don't know if this was an actual, because we've seen so many lies from Axios and others that Biden and Netanyahu or Biden is trying to end this, and then it turned out it was all a lie.
He said
Biden
that
never did.
he said the same thing about Joe Biden calling Benjamin Netanyahu.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what I was saying. We kept hearing that Biden and he were, they had arguments and Biden was pushing for, and then later on it turned out Biden never did anything. It was all a lie. It was all a lie to make ordinary Americans and increasingly those who are voted for the Democratic Party who are outraged to keep them silent or to keep them on board with the Biden regime. So there is no reason in the world to believe anything that Axios says. However, the fact that it has been put out there is, and the Hebrew media today is lashing out at Netanyahu, and I'm sure you're following this. And of course, his coalition allies and these criminals are all lashing out at him. And I'm just wondering, maybe if there is a decision among the powerful billionaire class, the Epstein class in the United States, that Netanyahu, Netanyahu has been hurting them, and they've been hurting themselves for 2.5 years now. But they're too ignorant and arrogant to understand it. But now maybe it's become so blatant and so bad that they're beginning to recognize that they may have to do something. So I'm wondering, maybe this conversation didn't happen, probably, possibly didn't happen, but that this fake news outlet put this out for a reason, and that reason may be that uh, powerful people are sort of planning on getting rid of Netanyahu.
I think the other point is these people in the United States, like Mark Levin came out and said that this is hugely damaging to Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. Why are you doing this? This is the difference that we haven't seen that before during the Biden administration. It means that something going on there.
Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, mad people. I mean, he's one of the most evil people on this planet. But yeah, exactly, exactly. Because in the past, we have not seen this reaction like we've seen in the Hebrew press, and also, as you say, in the United States, uh, his reaction. So whether this really took place or not, I don't know. But I'm somewhat skeptical because of Biden and even earlier I mean, right before the 12-day war, if you recall, they were saying Trump and Netanyahu have big differences, and Trump wants to give the negotiations a chance to get somewhere, and then they attacked Iran. So that was all fake. So that's why I'm very skeptical. But it was a significant statement, hurtful to Netanyahu, and we're seeing, as you rightly point out, in the United States, but also in the Hebrew press, that some things are happening. So we'll see. But in any case, I've always believed that this last 2.5 years, is getting close to 3 years, has been devastating for the Israeli regime, and at all levels, and it is despised across the world. And now the world economy is moving towards collapse, and people know that they are the reason behind it. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And maybe there are powerful forces within the Zionist class, the Epstein class, and if there may be divisions, I'm sure there are divisions, but maybe there are forces that say we have to stop this, and one way to do it is to remove Netanyahu. And then when another government comes, we'll say, oh, everything was Netanyahu's fault, right? Sort of to give the Israeli regime this opportunity to rehabilitate itself, even though any sane person would know that the problem is not Netanyahu, it's Zionism, and that all of the opposition is just as genocidal as Netanyahu, and they've said it. I mean, there are statements. It's all out there. Uh, it's all clear, frankly. But still, there are naive people, and then mainstream media could say the new prime minister, he wants peace, and so on and so forth. And maybe that a segment of the powerful Epstein class thinks that now is the time to remove Netanyahu. Again, this is just just something that I've been thinking about. No one has said anything like this that I've heard of, and it may be completely wrong.
I think Benjamin Netanyahu thought that the attack on Iran would be the final blow to the acts of resistance. They're going to destroy the acts of resistance. Right now, what's going on is totally the opposite. And
But also, Nima, maybe they thought that Iran would not strike at the Israeli regime over Lebanon, which I think it was clear as day that Iran would. There was not a chance in the world that Iran would allow them to destroy Dahia. But maybe they thought, again, and sorry for interrupting you, but as you rightly point out, the 12-day war, they thought Iran would collapse. They should have learned a lesson, but no. Then the 39 days of hot war, with Americans bringing in everything they have, far more powerful than the Zionist regime, which lost the war against Iran halfway. It was clear that they were losing halfway through the 12-day war. So after this, they failed. You'd think they'd learn a lesson. Then they say, okay, let's impose a siege, a double-edged sword. They're destroying the global economy, but let's impose it, they'll fall. Again, it was clear it wouldn't happen. And now it's clear that if they restart the war, that they would lose. And it's clear that if they attack Dahia or take the war in Lebanon beyond a certain point, that Iran would strike. It's all very clear. But it makes me wonder, really, we used to all think that Zionist Hasbara and their propaganda, mainstream with how good they are at propaganda. They're horrible. And we used to always be told how fantastic Mossad was and how evil, but very, not fantastic in a positive way, how competent they were, how capable they were. Now I'm wondering, these people seem to be very stupid and they cannot make correct assessments. Maybe there are a few people here and there, but at least as a body, as a state, as a important element of the state, CIA and Mossad and so on, and MI6, they don't seem to understand anything. They seem to be quite ignorant. Maybe some smart analysts in there, but obviously their voices aren't being heard. So now I really think the West, the more you look and the more we're seeing things, it seems that they are, a lot of this was just a facade. And the martyr Seyed Hassan Nasrallah, one of the great men of any era, he said that it's weaker than a spider web, the Zionist regime. It really is. When we look and see it objectively, we see, it's, as they say, like the paper tiger. It's actually, they're all much weaker than we assume them to be. But it is that aura of power and invincibility that allows them to do.
I think the only thing that they're good at is killing and assassinating people, mostly civilians. That's the only thing that they're good at. And there is no strategy.
And the only thing that Western journalists are good at is distracting public opinion from reality. Well, legacy, mainstream, corporate media, whatever it's called.